What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another Angle of Pursuit podcast, your fantasy football home over at fakepigskin.com. I'm your host, Kyle Robert. You follow me on Twitter at NotoriousKRO. With me to help recap Week 10, it's DJ Boyer. What's up, DJ?
Double-digit weeks already. It's amazing.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. This season seems to be just flying by, and I don't really know what I'm going to do with myself once it's over. So I guess we just got to sit back and enjoy all the football and enjoy the madness. I guess before we jump in, obviously we're going to talk some waiver wire. We're going to talk about some injuries. We're talking about all that good stuff. What was your biggest takeaway from Week 10? What was the thing that impressed you or stood out or whatnot?
The Bears aren't going anywhere. They're not going away. This is not only starting to look like a team that can challenge for the playoffs, but possibly win that NFC North. And if they keep having these big, great weeks on offense, you're looking at about 3-4 viable options week to week to go along with that stellar defense.
Yeah, I knew the Khalil Mack trade would be interesting and help make the Bears a lot more competitive, but I don't know that I expected them to be this dominant in that division, a division that we expected Minnesota to kind of run away with after what they did last year. We expected Aaron Rodgers, a healthy Aaron Rodgers, to be in the mix, but maybe even Detroit making some noise. But here we are, and we're talking about the Bears. They have two legit running backs. They have some receivers, obviously that defense. We'll talk Anthony Miller, who will definitely make an appearance in the waiver wire segment. But DJ and I were both sitting here banging the table for him last week. Goes out, 5 catches, 122 yards, scores a touchdown. I know he's in some of your lineups, DJ. I know he's definitely in some of mine. Was very impressed with that performance.
Absolutely. And talking about really, I think the opportunities are going to keep presenting themselves as long as Allen Robinson's going to stay on the field, because he's a guy who just really seemed to be scratching the surface of what he was going to be doing in Jacksonville. Had that injury derail him after that rookie season, and I think he's finally getting back to that caliber player that we saw early on, and I think can develop into a big-time star in this league.
Yeah, and I think, it's interesting, like we want to plug in these new coaches, these new OCs, and assume that everything will just pick up and take off. And these guys take time to kind of learn the system, to do less thinking, to be more playing. I'm seeing it with my Titans, who had an impressive performance against the Patriots. But, it takes time for these guys to figure out the offense. Obviously, Trubisky has his moments where it's a little less than ideal in terms of some of the throws he makes. But, Allen Robinson was amazing. Anthony Miller was amazing. Speaking of amazing, we could talk about Aaron Jones, who finally got a bulk of the work. 145 yards, 2 touchdowns. Got 15 carries to Jamal Williams only having 3. Obviously, against the Dolphins, it was nice for game script and whatnot. But Jones is the man and needs to be getting the volume as such. And hopefully this is a sign of things to come for Aaron Jones owners.
He's always been the more explosive of the two backs, but Jamal Williams has really just done enough to stick around, and you got to like the makeup of him. But at the same time, Green Bay just had a brutal schedule, not only just playing some very tough teams, tough against the run, falling behind in a lot of games where maybe not only not having Jones tote the ball, but having the running game assembled was really not the way to go. But Green Bay needs offense. I mean, they can't just count on Aaron Rodgers week in and week out. And, if they're able to keep this going forward, and they've got a favorable schedule in these coming weeks, they just got over the hump of the toughest part of their schedule. I think it really works to a lot of Aaron Jones owners out there. If you were lucky enough to pick him up, I think you're really going to start reaping the rewards of your waiver wire transaction.
Yeah, if you were staying patient, because it was definitely frustrating to see him get so much split time with Jamal Williams, and but he finally is producing like we expected. Same goes for Nick Chubb, who carried the ball for 176 yards and a touchdown, caught the ball 3 times for another 33 yards and another touchdown. Impressive performance. Obviously, with Baker and a rookie quarterback, it's hard to, expect this on a week-to-week basis. But I definitely feel like he's trending in the right direction, and between the coaching moves and just understanding this guy is really talented, they're finally starting to give him the volume he needs, and looks like he's going to be a guy that will be really valuable throughout the rest of the season.
Yeah, even with Duke Johnson there, he's still going to get some work. He's still going to be catching the ball. But Chubb's a guy you can really use at the goal line as well. Even if he's not having the best of games, he should get the majority of the goal line work. Maybe if he's only getting 40 to 50 yards a particular week, the chances of him scoring a touchdown are pretty good. And I really think that there's still some instability there. Obviously, with the coaching shakeup that's taken place, the Browns, it's still not stable ground yet. But I mean, this is if you're a Cleveland Brown right now fan, 3-6-1, but you've got to be very optimistic. It's the best your team's looked in about 5 years.
Yeah, no, and the thing about it is they go into games and there's a reasonable expectation for them to at least be competitive, if not have a chance to win the game. And if you own pieces of this offense that it makes you feel better, obviously with a rookie quarterback, you're gonna get a lot of up and down weeks, which could make things frustrating for Nick Chubb owners. But Njoku, Rashard Higgins made an appearance, got a touchdown this week. They're figuring some stuff out, so we'll see kind of how the rest of the season plays out for them. But yeah, I expect Nick Chubb and Aaron Jones to be really, really valuable to their fantasy owners. Let's talk about your Eagles, because there's a lot to get into. Obviously, Sunday night's game didn't go the way you had hoped as a fan. But for fantasy owners, Golden Tate only had 2 catches on 4 targets for 19 yards. Do you think this was just him getting worked into the offense, finding ways to get him plays, and then he will be a guy that's in the 7 to 10 target range? Or do you think there's going to be weeks like this when you have Zach Ertz is the primary guy and Alshon Jeffrey, and we'll talk about that running game. I guess, how do you see Tate fitting in, and kind of expectations for him on a week-to-week basis?
It might take another week or two, but I see him eventually being a good fit, and I don't think the Eagles would have made the move with a 3rd rounder if they didn't think they had a realistic shot of getting him to a longer term deal. Mm-hmm. The only thing that was really tricky when they brought him aboard was him and Aguilar kind of play the same position. Aguilar really struggled when they had him on the outside. Him playing the slot last year was a career kind of revival for him. Actually, kind of saved his career. Yeah. This year he's played both, but most of his damage is still from the slot. Mm-hmm. So it's not that Golden Tate is not going to be significant in this offense, but I'd like to see the Eagles, if they're going to be consistent, to try and get some packages where they can work them both on the field, because right now it might be swapping one out for the other. And I think for kind of a long-term purposes, for Aguilar owners and for Tate owners, they've got to find more ways to get them both on the field, and I think they'll be productive.
Yeah, and obviously Aguilar got that long down the field play, and maybe that's the way they turn him into a little bit more of a field stretcher, kind of what they wanted when they signed Torrey Smith last year and whatnot. But yeah, I guess if I'm a Golden Tate owner, I'm staying patient. I expect better things as well. But it will be interesting to see, this offense funnels so much through their tight ends that, it'll be interesting to see how the rest of the targets shake out. Let's talk about the running backs, because we obviously saw Josh Adams take over and look really good a week ago. It's still kind of a mess where they're giving a few guys the rock. Peterson came out and said that Adams should be getting more touches. Do you think Adams is the guy that fantasy owners can look at and say, I trust him to get enough volume on a week-to-week basis? Or with Corey Clement and Smallwood, and then maybe if Sproles actually returns at some point, there's just too many names and too many mouths to feed that trusting any of these guys on a week-to-week basis is just not realistic.
I think right now I wouldn't touch that running game with a 10-foot pole. I think Adams deserves more carries. He's done a decent job. The thing that really limits him is he's never really been known as a pass catcher, and the Eagles, just much like the tight end, there was really a big reason why they brought Sproles back in the fold when a lot of people thought he would be cut at the age of 35, was trying to get that passing game going, and that's what they really miss, is that dynamic catching running back out of the backfield. We're talking about the Bears. A player like Tariq Cohen would be absolute murder on this offense, and Josh Adams, while a good, very, very good free agent pickup before the season began, just those pass catching skills, just kind of a square peg round hole in that for long term health with that Eagle offense. But if it's not going to be Philadelphia, he should catch on somewhere. He'll take a couple of negative runs here or there. He's not the fastest guy, but he's got pretty good vision and makes very good decisions when he's carrying the ball.
Yeah, if you're desperate, I think he's definitely worth looking at. But yeah, I think most weeks he's gonna be hard to trust. But he will have good weeks. And, we were talking about Golden Tate and Aguilar and kind of that offense, but I saw some interesting plays where Aguilar lined up in the backfield and then would spread out, or so I feel like him and Tate could be the guy that kind of fills that Sproles role kind of as a pass catcher out of the backfield, and that could allow them to get all those guys on the field more consistently. Let's talk some more news. Let's talk some injuries. Let's talk Leonard Fournette, who's finally back. Got 24 carries, but only 53 rushing yards. Caught the ball 5 more times for 56 yards. Did score 2 touchdowns, so those owners that held on and were patient enough, he rewarded them. But, for a guy that's coming in off of hamstring issues and clearly lacking, any sort of consistent game time as of late, it feels a little aggressive to give him almost 30 touches. I guess, do you expect him just to, this is who he is, and when he's healthy, they're going to give him the volume and, feed the beast?
It's really been a mystery. I think maybe that's what they're trying to do now, because it's just been so inconsistent and they just really don't know what they're getting there. This is not just a thing that's happened this year. It's been the hamstrings, it's been the ankles. There's just been various issues. So that's the only thing that's really kind of dogged him throughout his career. Really only one season where he's been very, very healthy. So maybe they're just trying to get the most out of him right now. That's going to be interesting to see going forward. I don't know if the Jaguars really meant to give him that much work in his first game back, but that was a little surprising to see.
Yeah, and obviously Carlos Hyde is a non-factor with a healthy Leonard Fournette. TJ Yeldon will get some work, but nothing to really hang your hat on a week-to-week basis, which is unfortunate. Speaking of guys that looked really good and finally are getting their opportunities, Rashad Penny, 12 carries, 108 yards, a touchdown, finally out-carried Mike Davis, which I don't know how it took this long. Having Chris Carson out obviously helped, but I guess, I don't know, there's talks that Carson should be good for Thursday. Is this going to be another situation kind of like in Philadelphia where each week you don't know what you're going to get? They're going to kind of mix and match running backs and just make it a messy situation for all the fantasy owners?
It seems that way, and it's a real shame because right now nobody's run the ball more in the NFL than Seattle. They lead actually in percentage of football. So you'd think if you can find a number one guy there that it's going to be good for you. Russell Wilson's actually running the ball a little bit more. I don't know if that's just a little more by design or it's just the way the ebb and flows of the games have been. But not sure. You're really going to have to. This is a team you're really going to have to watch the injury report on this week and see if Carson, what that health is really going to determine a lot about Rashad Penny. I think we're going to see him more, but I still think Carson's the guy if he is healthy and comes back this Thursday. He's been the more consistent player, obviously.
Yeah, no, I'm in 100% agreement, which is frustrating because I own Rashad Penny in a lot of places and want him to be the guy. But yeah, I think if Chris Carson comes back and is healthy, Rashad Penny is going to be, getting a few hit carries, but not nearly the work we saw on Sunday. And speaking of Wilson, 9 for 92 in terms of rushing, 5 for 41 a week before that, 6 carries for 20 yards 4 weeks ago. So right after we were talking about how Wilson's not really running and not racking up the yards, it seems like they realize how dynamic he can be, and unfortunately that's kind of what this offense needs to kind of make everything else go. Wilson has to show that ability. even if he doesn't do it, all the time, he has to move and run. And Russell Wilson owners, it seems like he's the one thing you can rely on is Russell Wilson down the stretch being really valuable. Sometimes it takes a while, and you have to take your lumps, but he's turning into the quarterback we see at the end of in the second half of seasons. And if you're in the playoffs with him, you're going to feel pretty good. Let's talk about it. It seems like all over the league we got all these positions where running backs are kind of just a mess. And Royce Freeman's expected to be back for Denver, who's coming off of their bye week. If you're a Philip Lindsay owner, are you concerned? Do you think Wilson, or do you think Freeman cuts into Penny's volume and is Freeman got dropped by a lot of teams down to about 50% ownership? Is he a guy that if he's on your waiver wire, you're looking to add this week?
I think if you've got the area or maybe the patience to sit him for a week and see how it goes, I think he's a good pickup, but I don't think I feel good enough to pick him up and start him right out of the gate. But he could be sneaky kind of good for you because another guy's been kind of dogged with some injury issues, but I've always thought he's been the best fit overall for Denver. Lindsay has obviously outperformed what many thought he'd be able to do, but if they're able to get Royce Freeman clicking, that's just going to pay dividends for Denver as they try to make this playoff push late in the season.
Yeah, I guess I am a Philip Lindsay owner in a lot of places, so I expect him to get the volume. But yeah, I'm also adding Freeman just because we've seen weirder things. We've seen guys finally get healthy and all this, and they look really good. Running backs are hard to come. So if you have the flexibility on your bench, I definitely like adding him. Like you mentioned, obviously we can't trust to play him this week, but if you have that room, I don't mind it. Let's talk about Cooper Kupp, who was incredible. Has torn his ACL, unfortunately, and you could tell pretty quickly. He went down non-contact, trying to make a cut. It's really unfortunate. You would expect Josh Reynolds to kind of fill that gap. Obviously, Brandon Cooks, Robert Woods are still the main guys. If you're a Jared Goff owner, are you feeling okay about still having Cooks and Woods and Reynolds? What are your expectations for Reynolds going forward, kind of filling in that Cooper Kupp role?
I'm still feeling good if I'm a Goff owner just because he's got so many weapons at his disposal. And I think that maybe Reynolds, even though the high catch output won't be there, got a nose for the end zone, maybe like he did a couple weeks back where he had 3 catches, but 2 went to the end zone.
Yep.
But I really think the thing that has helped the Rams, even though they've got so many weapons, I think there's been more of an effort to involve players like Tyler Higbee and Gerald Everett. Yep. They're really starting to get that tight end / H-back role. And we're seeing some packages, kind of like you said about the Eagles, where they have both of them, and they're kind of lining up in the backfield. It's something Higbee did a lot of back at Western Kentucky. So there's some familiarity there. They're comfortable. And I think, again, there's just so many weapons there. And now that just makes the Rams that much more dangerous because they're really starting to utilize that tight end. The only thing is, from a fantasy standpoint, it's kind of a two-headed monster. You don't know who's going to get the most work week in and week out.
Yeah.
But they're definitely production from the position.
Yeah, well, and with Sean McVay scheming things up, obviously he'll find unique ways to get those guys involved. And once again, if you're a Jared Goff owner, you're doing backflips because he's got so many guys throw the football to, guys that can take short passes, go for touchdown. Obviously, having Todd Gurley to throw to out of the backfield always helps. There's just so much to like about this team and this offense. It's hard to not be excited. Let's talk about. I do want to mention really quickly Julian Edelman dealing with a foot injury, expected to miss little to no time. If you're an Edelman owner, I wouldn't stress. I want to go to Baltimore though, because there is an interesting situation. Obviously, the Ravens had a bye week. Joe Flacco is dealing with a hip issue. The Ravens are being really kind of vague about what's going on and what we should expect. And obviously, Lamar Jackson's seen work here and there. Do you think coming out of the bye, it's Lamar Jackson time and he kind of takes over? Or do you think if Flacco is healthy enough, they'll let him run out the rest of the season, even with the Ravens kind of floundering, not really telling if they're going to be a playoff team or not?
I really think that it's not quite Lamar Jackson time yet. I still think if Flacco is going to be healthy, they're going to go to him. There's maybe even a distinct possibility that Robert Griffin gets a start here, that maybe they're uh, really kind of want to protect Jackson, don't really think he's healthy. Baltimore's not really out of it yet, especially with Cincinnati getting a shellacking this week. Number two in that position, in that division, if they get hot against some of the other teams, are really make a very good push to get a wild card spot, because it's looking more and more like Pittsburgh starting to take control of that division.
Yeah.
So I think with them some life there, they really like it to be Flacco, but I think if you see another loss or two here in the next couple of weeks, I think we're going to start the whispers are going to get louder, and then we'll probably see some action taken.
Yeah, they play. So they play at home versus Cincinnati, at home versus the Raiders, and then at Atlanta the next 3 weeks. All three games that they should be at least, if not favored, pretty close. In terms of the point spread. All of a sudden they're 7-5. Maybe they stick with Flacco and roll him out. Then they go to Kansas City. That's probably Flacco's last game if things go poorly. And then all of a sudden we're looking at Lamar Jackson for the fantasy playoffs against Tampa Bay, the Chargers, and the Browns. So if you have room on the back of your bench, you don't really love your quarterback situation, I don't hate stashing Lamar Jackson, because if he gets in and he is the guy and he's running around doing stuff, he could be a guy that makes a big difference. That said, he could sit on your bench and do nothing the rest of the year, and then all of a sudden you're really, he's kind of using up a roster spot. So don't expect Hall of Fame, right away. But there is a potential that if you can sit on him for a couple weeks, he could be a guy that helps you in the fantasy playoffs.
And I'll get to watch that first hand. I will be at the Ravens Bengals game this week. I was there last year, the last game of the season, when the Bengals had that surprise win with the Tyler Boyd catch, which I've never heard a stadium go so quiet in my life. It was kind of like a giant vacuum was on top of the stadium and just sucked the life out of the place. It was interesting stuff. That'll be interesting to see if that can be replicated.
Yeah, I'm very curious to see how that plays out, and hope maybe you'll be in attendance for Lamar Jackson's first start. That would be that could be a story that you're 10 years from now you can be like, well, yeah, I was at that game when Lamar Jackson, future Hall of Famer, stepped in, or when Lamar Jackson shows that, oh, actually he probably should be playing the NFL. So that could be a very, very interesting game. So we'll definitely have to discuss that next week. All right, let's hit some waiver wire names. Obviously, we talked Anthony Miller. I think if you need a guy who you can trust on a week-to-week basis, definitely makes the list. Josh Reynolds makes the list. John Ross makes the list, who obviously got a touchdown. They're still dealing without A.J. Green. I guess for you, if you're looking at picking up receivers, Anthony Miller, Josh Reynolds, John Ross, how are you prioritizing these guys for the waiver wire?
Well, Anthony Miller, number one far and away. Back in one of the first episodes we had done this year, I said he had all the makings of a guy who was going to come on strong in the second half of the season. So we're looking pretty good right now, but I'm glad you bring up John Ross, because that is an area where I wanted to go. It's really been kind of a struggle for him, kind of staying healthy. He's had a few issues, but just getting him the ball, and now just out of attrition, the fact without A.J. Green, that they're looking for that spark. They're looking to stretch the field. Obviously, it was the speed that got him drafted so high. So I think there's going to be an opportunity there. Just got to hope that the Bengals show up a little bit more, or because this was just an ugly game, and have them having more balance, because Joe Mixon's been very good running the football, and I think you saw that they can still be very effective. There's a lot of players to throw the ball to, but when they become one-dimensional and you take that running game away, Andy Dalton's a completely different quarterback. You've got to have the threat of a run there for Cincinnati to be effective.
Well, if you're excited about a potential Bengals rebirth, they are talking about bringing Hugh Jackson back, so that is surely will fix all of their issues that they've had over the past couple of weeks. Yeah, I see. It's so frustrating. The Bengals, like you look at that offense, and maybe it's just no AJ Green really derails what they do. But you think with Joe Mixon and Tyler Boyd and Dalton's obviously not amazing, but he's reliable, and when he has weapons, looks really good. I don't know what to make of this team. It's very frustrating. Let's talk some running backs. So Derrick Henry is owned in about 50% of leagues. Obviously, isn't the primary guy. Dion Lewis is that guy, but he did have 2 touchdowns. Do you buy the Derrick Henry resurgence, or do you think in games, obviously when they when the Titans get up big, he'll be involved, but in the majority of games, we don't expect him to see any sort of consistent volume?
I don't expect the consistent volume right now, especially with that surprise victory, because at 5-4, Tennessee's looking really good and wants to make that playoff push. So I think you're going to go a little more with Dion Lewis. He's going to see the bulk of the work, but they're going to be smart about it as well. I think he's going to be the guy that's going to spell Lewis. Maybe he'll get some more goal line opportunities, but especially with Dion Lewis and the value that he adds as a pass catcher, especially if you're in a PPR league, he still adds so much value. So I still think it's a wait-and-see approach. But, Lewis has had a few dings and scrapes through the years. So he's a good guy to kind of stash away on your bench if that happens, because Dion Lewis making it through a season unscathed that's not where the smart money would lie in Vegas, let's just say.
If you're stashing one, Derrick Henry or Royce Freeman?
Oh, wow. That's almost like a toss-up, but I would say probably Henry, just because Freeman, you don't really know what we're going to get. Maybe there's a high chance of maybe some re-aggravating something there. And Philip Lindsay's been good. So I think Henry's just the more proven commodity at this point, especially with it getting colder. You're going to want to run the football more. And he seems to be more of that between the tackle back that can really kind of get you some big yards, where Royce Freeman, again, that the health is just a little bit of concern.
Yep. No, I couldn't agree more. I'm adding Derrick Henry, and I know it's been a frustrating season, but I think there is some potential for him to be involved, especially if this Titans team, is kind of what we've seen the past couple weeks. They're heading in the right direction. They have a chance to run the ball a little bit more in the second half. He could be definitely involved. Now, if you're shooting for upside, are we targeting Rashad Penny or are we targeting Josh Adams?
I think we're targeting Rashad Penny because, one, I think there's just more upside as a runner. Two, I just think that with the Eagles, you just don't know what you're going to get. You could have, over the next 4 weeks, you could have a different guy carrying the ball more than anybody else. It's going to be Smallwood 1 week or Adams, or you're going to get Corey Clement another, where I think it's, especially if Chris Carson's not going to be coming back healthy right away. If with Penny being productive, maybe they take their time with him and they want to, keep him healthy if they are going to make a playoff push.
Yeah, and they tried to push him back last week, and he played, but only the first half, and he was dealing with a hip injury, and obviously they're playing Thursday night, so we'll know pretty quickly, which is good. So if you're not going to have Penny or have the full version, you can kind of make plans accordingly. But I'm with you there. I think Rashad Penny, even if you don't play him this week, is a must add. He's available in so many leagues, and if Carson gets banged up and all of a sudden and Penny steals a show, he could be the guy down the stretch as the Seahawks try and look a little bit better. All right, DJ, let's turn our focus. Obviously, we hit some waiver wire targets. Let's look at Week 11 because obviously, we're continuing to roll, but Week 11, Monday Night Football from Mexico City, the Kansas City Chiefs and Los Angeles Rams. I could not be more excited about a Monday Night Football game, and especially the way the Monday Night Football games have gone this season. I mean, obviously we're watching Niners Giants right now, which is a barn burner, but the fact that we're going to have this big of a game is very exciting and definitely has my attention for Week 11.
Boy, the schedule maker, they got it right here.
Yeah.
And first off, speaking of that Giant game, Beckham's gotten to the end zone again.
Yep.
DJ's getting a little worried. So he's got Beckham shown up. Burita's got 2 touchdowns. So there's been a couple good performances thus far. We've got that 2017 right now. Fourth quarter looks to be imminent. But I think that, just the opportunity for so much good production, especially with the Chiefs, because Marcus Peters has been getting picked on a little bit. It was, one of the high-priced and high visibility moves that the Rams made, and Peters, he a little bit better, but at the same time, he's really gotten kind of picked on the last 3-4 weeks, and we've seen that what the Chiefs have been able to do with those creating mismatches in the secondary is something they do well. And just when they're doing it with their wide receivers, you throw Travis Kelce out there, who could be the best tight end in football. So there's just weapons coming from everywhere. So high scoring game looks to be imminent. And I really think that you got anybody on these teams, it's safe to play just about anyone.
Yeah, the over-under, I think, is set at 63, and it'll probably go up from there. It is very interesting because Peters is one of those guys that makes big plays, and obviously in terms of – Odell almost had his 3rd touchdown. In terms of in terms of like big plays, in terms of impressive performances, he makes those, but he also has games where he gets torched a lot and kind of underwhelms as a defender. So people kind of know the name, and obviously he can shut guys down, but he can be thrown on. So don't be afraid to play Tyreek Hill, to play. It looks like Sammy Watkins could be back. It is a good week for bye weeks in terms of 6 teams are on bye, but it's Buffalo, it's Cleveland, it's Miami. Obviously the Patriots are different. The Jets and the Niners. So a lot of teams with only maybe 1 or 2 fantasy relevant players. So that's great to see. And if you're a Julian Edelman owner, obviously having the Patriots on bye this week will allow him to get fully healthy for next week. What's your take on Gronk? Is this a guy that, obviously he's missed more time and just kind of sat out games? Do you feel like the Patriots are kind of saving him for the playoffs, or do you think there's serious concern about kind of where he's at, and owners should be adding somebody, as a more reliable than just, streaming option on a week-to-week basis?
I think they're trying to save him right now, and not only just for this season, but for his Patriot career, because I think there's a very strong probability that they cut ties with him after this season. So I think that if you're kind of in a dynasty league, I think it's maybe looking like the end here. I think that they still think they're going to get something out of him this year, but I think they're going to take that wait-and-see approach, because he's been dinged up for a lot of their playoff runs over the last few years. So they have to sacrifice some regular season games in order to try and have him at his healthiest for the playoffs. I think that's a trade-off they're willing to deal with, especially with in a weaker division like they're in.
Absolutely. I think I'm with you there. I think they're saving him. They want to make a real run in the playoffs and try and get another Super Bowl. So it is interesting. Although Josh Gordon seems to really step up when Gronk doesn't play. So that's something to keep an eye on for those Josh Gordon owners. But DJ, this was a lot of fun. Good to catch up. Obviously got a lot of quality information out there. Enjoy the rest of your week. Enjoy your game on Sunday. And we'll be right back next week to wrap up Week 11. But for DJ Boyer, I'm Kyle Robert, and we'll talk to you guys next time.